Hello, I'm Dan and I'm from Full Scale Conflict Commissions, and I'm back here at BrisVegas Comics for this 3-part painting series using the D&D pre-primed model range from WizKids. In this episode, we're going to be painting a stone giant from the D&D range. We're going to do the same thing with the stone giant as we did with the golem. So we're going to pin it at the feet area again, so we can place it on some cork so that we can paint it without touching it. And we're going to start with the flesh using game color Somber Grey. Now the next color we're going to hit the stone giant with is game color Steel Grey, and we're going to focus this in a semi-zenithal style, which we're going to focus mostly on the highest points of the flesh and less underneath in the armpit area, underneath the legs toward the robe, and under this arm back here. The next thing we're going to do is a 1-to-1 mix of game color Glacier Blue and game color Steel Grey. So we're going to focus this mix on all the highest points of the model in that zenithal style, so that we've got a nice gradient between the darkest that should be in the shadow to the lightest, which would be in the sun. As you can see, we should have some brilliant highlights and some lovely shadows naturally forming in the flesh. The next color we're going to use is dark blue grey from the model color range of Vallejo, and we're going to paint both the base and the stalagmite that he's holding on to.
Three, two, one, action.
We're going to pick some of the individual rocks on the base out using game color Terracotta. The next color we're going to use is Beastie Brown from the game color range, and we're going to focus this on all the robes on the model. The next color we're going to use is Bone White from the game color range, and we're going to do all the fur on the shoulder. The next step is going to be Leather Brown from the game color range, and we're going to focus on all the ridges of the clothing and the garment, the cape. There's something or other.
Oh, you're gonna do edge highlighting.
Sort of. The next thing we're going to do with the clothing is we're going to do a 1-to-1 mix of bone white and leather brown and hit all the edges on the clothing. The next thing we're going to do is a enamel filter using Hull Red from Tamiya XF9, and we're going to do all the clothing, and we're going to do all of the cloth. The reason we're using the enamel as a wash is if we accidentally get any onto the skin, we can remove it 100% without staining all that airbrush work that we've done, which is something that you would struggle with if you were using an acrylic wash. So the enamel as a filter is essentially a glaze. So it's a nice, very translucent thinning that we've placed all over the model, allowed to dry, and as you can see, all that work has helped to be blended together. The great thing about enamels is not only its working time, but its cleanup. If you were to spill it on something that you didn't want to, you'll be able to 100% clean it back up using the enamel thinner. It will not affect the acrylic underneath the enamel, and it does not require varnishing. The next step is we're going to add some Tamiya Flat Black XF1 to our Hull Red to get into the deepest recesses in the cloth. We're just going to use the flat black enamel on its own, and we're going to focus it entirely onto the ends of the fur. And then we're going to blend it in using a wet, clean brush with some enamel thinner on it. What we're going to do now is use the flat black enamel, and we're going to thin it down to a wash consistency again, and we're going to deliberately target areas like the mouth, the eyes, and the nose, and in the ears. Again, don't be too worried about how messy that is, because once it starts getting a bit tacky, once it becomes a bit tacky, we'll be able to come back with a clean brush and feather that around and remove whatever we don't want and keep what we want. And keep what we do want. And keep what we do want. So using the enamel on the stone giant, you can see we've used it like makeup and gave him some contouring around the cheekbones and then the nose line and under the eyes, which gives him just that little bit more definition that the airbrush wasn't going to give us. The next thing we're going to do is use off-white from Vallejo Game Color, and we're going to put in the eyes. Just make sure you don't have too much paint on the brush. The next thing we're going to use is light sienna pigment from Vallejo Pigments, and we're going to apply it to the base. So we're going to mix the pigment with isopropyl alcohol. What this will do is it will etch the pigment in with the paint on the base, and it will set it in place. We're going to use a bit more pigment on the stalagmite, and it's going to be the brown iron oxide from Vallejo Pigments. We're going to do this just to give it a little bit more interest than just being a grey lump of rock in his hand. Same deal, it's mixed with isopropyl alcohol, so that will reactivate the paint a little bit, and it will help etch and set that pigment in place. Just dabbing it on very lightly, because if you work it too roughly, because that isopropyl alcohol reactivates the paint, you'll end up stripping the paint from the model and you'll make a mess. That will have to be repainted. And as you can see, that nice brown iron oxide has given it a nice look. And with that, all we need to do is varnish it and then apply it to its base. The very last thing we really need to do with this is give it a matte varnish to seal up all the work, protect the pigment and protect all the paint so that you can put it on your tabletop and get your RPG games rolling with the giant. And with that, our stone giant is complete. These techniques are very easy to do and anyone can do them with not a great deal of experience at all. Overall, this only took an hour and a half to paint, from out of the box to completion. And as you can see, it's now ready to scare all your heroes in your D&D quest and send them packing. All the techniques we've used to paint these models are very simple. Enamels really don't require a lot of experience to get good results from. They're very easy to use and exceptionally easy to clean up. Unlike oils that require a few extra steps, enamels are a great step up into advancing your painting skills. And until next time, happy painting.